All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. An executive session was held in advance of this meeting to discuss personnel and contract and other legal matters. If you could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
This week, our district community lost a longtime member of our family with the passing of Mr. Tim Hammaker. Tim is remembered for many things, including his dedication, his work ethic, but most of all, his sincere kindness. Tim was a mentor to many here at Susquenita School District. Tonight, we honor Tim Hammaker and pay our respects to him and send our condolences to the Hammaker family with a moment of silence. At this time, please join me in a moment of silence to honor Mr. Tim Hammaker. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I got a first and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, is there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 4 is public comments about agenda items only. If there's anybody in the public that's interested in talking, you can come down the microphone now. All right, not seeing anybody. We're going to move on to number 5, looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the February 8th regular board meeting and the March 1st caucus meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, is there any negative votes? All right, motion carries. Presentations of board resolution and timeline information for the bank loan.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Thomas Smida and Mr. Brad Remming.
Good evening. I'm Tom Smite, and I'm sure you know Brad Remick from PFM. I'm from the law firm of Meddy Evans in Woodside. It's been our privilege to have served as your bond counsel for quite some time now, and tonight we're here to discuss and to present. Tonight, well, there you go. Tonight, I'm here to introduce you to a resolution in connection with the issuance of a $2,350,000 general obligation note. The note is issued for the purposes of upgrading your athletic facilities and for land acquisition purposes. The note is, again, as the amount of $2,350,000 will be a general obligation pledge, which means that you are pledging your full faith and tax and credit for its repayment. We've received a bid from a bank by the name of Jim Thorpe Neighborhood Bank that successfully responded to the RFP that was put out by PFM, a lot of initials there. The interest rate in that bid was 1.55%, and it will have a maturity in 2024. It is prepayable at any time, and it comes with a 6-month draw period, and allowing you to draw down as much as you need up to a maximum of $2,350,000 within the first 6 months. The resolution sets forth requirements of the Local Government Unit Debt Act, again, pledging your full faith and tax and credit, and the submission of a transcript to the Department of Community and Economic Development for approval. There's a borrowing base, there's a debt statement, and there is a certified copy of the resolution that will be submitted. The resolution also provides for certain tax covenants, and that you will not borrow the money and invest it to make a higher returning yield than what you're paying in interest on it. It sets forth certain provisions required, again, under the Act. And that is really about as much of a summary as I can give you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, I don't see any questions. Thank you.
Surely.
You did well. Student representative reports?
Is it on? Okay. Hi, everyone. So, to begin with, as many of you know, we had Minithon on Friday from 9 to 5. And let me just say, the turnout was amazing. We had so many kids get involved. Student council did an amazing job at preparing everything. It was very planned out, and it ran very well and smoothly. We raised over $15,000 for 4 diamonds, which is incredible, and it is the new record for Minithon. And it was possible because of many local businesses and donations, and I'd just like to thank everybody and thank Student Council because I know they worked super hard on that. And then another event over the weekend was on Saturday, the Spanish National Honor Society dance, and it was the first spring dance that we've had in a very long time. It's the first one that I was able to attend. It was from 6 to 9, and it went really well. We had a good turnout. It was smooth, and all the kids had a really good time.
Alrighty, it is that time of the year where spring sports is getting to get started and they start practicing. I think a lot of kids are really excited to get out there and break some new records, you know. So everyone's really excited. I've heard track kids are really excited to be sprinting and jumping and throwing. So, but then on the other hand, we have some of our wrestlers are going to states Thursday through Saturday. Dominic Caldwell, Mason McClendon, and Cale Quigley are going to represent Susquenita. I believe, is it in the somewhere? I think they're in Hershey. Hershey, yeah. I saw that in the paper. So I believe that there might be a little fan section going to be there. So I'm sure the wrestlers would love to see part of the community there. And we are really excited for them to be going to have this wonderful opportunity. And then we have one swimmer going to states next week, Michael Singley, our thoroughly revered swimmer. And we are very proud of all of his accomplishments, being a wonderful Blackhawk.
On more of a band and musical note, jazz band went and played at the Fire and Ice Festival over the weekend, and from what I've heard, it went really well. They did a good job. And then we also have Pico Jazz coming up on April 8th, and that's going to be at Greenwood, and I'm sure more information will be released later on.
Then lastly, we have our musical, Mamma Mia. The senior citizen showing will be March 21st, I believe sometime in the afternoon. And then the actual evenings are March 24th through 26th, 7 p.m. I believe the ticket site went up yesterday. So come out, go out, get your tickets. I've heard very good things. It's going to be a good show. And I believe there are flyers around the school if you need a link to go find the tickets. So I'm really excited. I'm planning on going. So I encourage you all to go out.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? All right, moving on.
Well, thank you both for the great report. And at this time, I'm excited. I'm going to introduce Mrs. Christine Matash, who's going to introduce our teacher and our students for a great student presentation here in March. So, Mrs. Matash?
Thank you, Dr. Fox. Tonight we have Mrs. Falzerano with her AP Calculus, Physics, and Calculus 2 classes, some of the students in those 3 classes, and they will be sharing a few examples of how they are utilizing technology to collaborate, communicate, inspire creatively and think critically as they explore real-world concept in ways that otherwise would not be possible. So thank you to Mrs. Falzarano and her students.
Thank you, Mrs. Matash. Hi, good evening. I'm Mrs. Falzarano. I teach the physics and calculus courses here at the high school. On behalf of the students that are with me here tonight and myself, we would like to thank you for inviting us here to present this evening. With me from the AP Calculus course is Cadence Lacha. From our physics course, straight from musical practice, is Miss Elena Kelly. And representing our Calculus 2 course tonight is Michael Singley. Each student is going to share just a brief little bit about how they've been utilizing technology to creatively express their learning. I'm going to start with Cadence, and she's going to talk to you about technology in AP Calculus.
Okay. So I am in Calculus, and we did a little project on area time graph. Is this working? Okay. So we used a sphero, which is pictured up in the left corner. And I'm going to give a little demonstration of how that works. Okay, Mrs. Falzarano. There you go. Okay. Okay, so if you just look right on the ground in front of everybody, and I'm going to run the program. I hope not.
It's going.
It'll work. That wasn't on purpose, I promise. So we use this and use the sphero as a reference for distance, and we put together a Keynote Presentation. That's a movie now, and I'm going to play that for everybody.
Area under a velocity time graph, presented by Cadence Lacha, Haley Glaze, and Ashley Rogers. In this video, Haley pushes a trash can, which gives it velocity. After Haley initially pushes the trash can, its velocity decreases because of the friction between the wheels and the floor. Materials and technology. The iPad was used throughout the entire process of creating the project. It allowed us to use the necessary apps and take any necessary videos needed. The Sphero app was used to control the Sphero and collect the data from said Sphero. The Numbers app was then used to export the data from the Sphero app into the application, and then the Numbers app was used to create a graph of the data. From there, we used the Keynote app to create the presentation. Data was collected by the Sphero and then moved into the Sphero app, where it was stored and used to create graphs. To the left is a graph of the distance traveled by the Sphero, and to the right is a graph of the velocity of the Sphero as it traveled.
Upon getting the sensor data, we can download that as a velocity graph into Numbers. From then, a table of values will appear. From these values, then a scatter plot can be made. A line of best fit can also be put in as a trend line in parabola style. The equation will pop up in the upper left-hand corner. By using the formula feature in numbers, we can add all the left Riemann sum rectangles and then add them all together for the total area under the graph, that being 1,505.02 centimeters.
Analysis using Riemann sums. This graph is of left rectangle Riemann sums, which is one technique we used to estimate the area under the function. We made the rectangles and found the area of each using the Numbers app. Then we added the area of each rectangle together. This gave us an approximate area of 1,505.02 centimeters. Analysis using definite integral. To find the definite integral, we took the antiderivative of the function of the graph. Then we determined the interval in which we were measuring. The interval was 0, 12.28. Then we plugged the ends of the interval into the antiderivative. We then found f of b minus f of a. Our final answer is 1,522.37 centimeters.
This whole project has a basis of Riemann sums, but what kinds are there? There are left, midpoint, and right ones. For this project, we use the left Riemann sums, but one similarity between all of them is that they are all estimates of the area under a graph, being the displacement from the velocity graph. Estimate for the sphero was about 1,505 centimeters, and to find a closer estimate, we used the integral of the line of best fit, bringing us to 1,522 centimeters. Both estimates were close, but the integral seems to hold a more accurate evaluation when compared to the graph, because integrals are more exact when it comes to area under a curve.
But how is it useful?
I'm glad Boy of Panic asked this question. Let's say there's a bird and it's a finch, and the finch is migrating. A scientist could use the velocity data of this bird to decide where the displacement is, and then finding the area of reference where the bird could be. This technique in practice could also be useful to find out the same scenario with cars, planes, even people hiking, and maybe even animals. One of the most important scenarios is being, how do you find a velociraptor?
How?
You find the integral of the acceleraptor.
Yeah, I'd like to thank my brother for acting for me. Should I move on to the next one then? Okay. Yeah, so then also in AP Calculus, we were given the task to apply optimization, which is a technique where you find the current volume and surface area and you relate them, and then you find the most optimal proportions where the surface area is decreased but still holds the same volume. So I put together a trailer depicting that. Thank you.
And I'm from physics. Just give that a second. There we go. Okay. So I'm from physics, and in this lab, we investigated projectile motion, and we determined how objects of the same mass and size will fall at the same rate, even if one is simply dropped and one is launched. And we were able to measure our results using a video, a motion diagram, and a graph with our data. Then I'm going to start the video. And then we have a video of Cadence using audio clips in Keynote to explain our results.
Launched horizontally and just dropped hit the ground at the same time. In the horizontal direction, the initial velocity and final velocity equal each other at about 2.31 meters per second. In the y direction, it started with an initial velocity of 0 meters per second and eventually got up to about negative 4.905 meters per second. The acceleration in the x direction is 0 meters per second, and the acceleration in the y direction is negative 9.81 meters per second. The ball that's just dropped represents the y changes and just has the y changes, but the ball launched horizontally represents a change in the x direction and the y direction.
We're going to move on to another lab that we did. We studied forces and friction and how they relate, and we did 3 mini labs, pictures all from each up on the board, and we all compiled them. The first lab we did involved a Croc, and we found out how mass affects the coefficient of static friction in the motion of the Croc. We used varied materials, which are up on the board.
On the gym floor with the front of the shoe facing forward. The force sensor was attached to the Croc using a Tide pipe cleaner. A string was tied to the force sensor. The force sensor was connected to an iPad by Bluetooth. The mass was placed into the Croc. The Croc was pulled by a string. This process was repeated with varying masses.
There's some data. And these are just screen recordings of the videos of the force sensor. They show up.
Here are the graphs of the longitudinal movement of the Croc. In the first trial, there was the least mass added and the static friction value is equal to the kinetic friction value. This is also true for the first 3, where the mass is relatively similar. Once we move to the heavier masses that were added to the shoe, the value grows larger. For run 3, we have about 6.6 newtons. Run 4, we have about 7.57 newtons, and the last one is the largest with the 12.66 newtons. The relationship between the mass and the frictional values are direct. Here in run 4 is the greatest graph that we have with the static friction value being larger than the kinetic friction value.
And then for the next lab, we used a pulley system with weights. And the objective of this one was to experiment with a pulley system to determine the coefficient of kinetic friction between 2 contacting surfaces. The materials are right up there on the board too. And there's videos of the procedure.
Inside the friction box. Masses were placed on the weight pan until the friction box measured a constant velocity. This process was repeated with 200 and 300 grams inside the friction box. This is a diagram of the Pulley System Lab we did. There's a friction box on top of a table with a mass inside. A string attaches this box to a weight pan with a mass on top. The string goes over a wheel and axle so that the weight pan is able to freely pull on the friction box. The weight pan is able to pull on the friction box due to the gravitational pull on the weight of the mass. This causes the friction box to be pulled towards the edge of the table. But since the friction box and the table are in contact with one another, the table has an opposing frictional force on the friction box. In this lab, we discovered that as long as an object is moving at a constant velocity, it will have a consistent coefficient of kinetic friction. The mass of our friction box and the weight pan changed, as well as the forces acting on the objects. Although the coefficient of kinetic friction barely changed, the average coefficient of kinetic friction was 0.206. The results of all three trials only differed by at most 0.003. This is because the masses and forces changed in relation to one another, which allowed the ratios to stay similar. We were able to use the mass of the weight pan and the mass, in addition to the acceleration due to gravity of 9.81 meters per second squared, to calculate the force applied on the friction box. Then, to calculate for the normal force the table had on the friction box, we were able to use the mass of the friction box in addition to the mass inside, as well as the gravitational force of 9.81 meters per second squared. This gave us the information we needed to find the friction force the table had on the box, as well as the coefficient of friction. We didn't need to calculate for the frictional force the table had on the box because we knew that the force applied and the frictional force on the box were in equilibrium because the box moved at a constant velocity towards the edge of the table. Then we were able to use the equation frictional kinetic force equals coefficient of kinetic force times normal force on an object, then transform that into the coefficient of kinetic friction equals the force of kinetic friction divided by the normal force of an object. This is how we found the coefficient of kinetic friction for each of our trials. Experiments finding the coefficient of kinetic friction between two objects or surfaces allows scientists to set standards of these coefficients of kinetic friction between objects and surfaces. This helps scientists easily share information about objects so that we can more quickly learn about the world around us. But these experiments have to be controlled to be considered accurate, to be able to share the correct information with others. And we made sure to control everything in this lab so we know that our data is correct and ready to be shared.
And then we had one more lab involving the sphero on the floor. And for this one, the objective was to experimentally determine how kinetic friction force affects displacement using the ball and covers.
In this lab, the first thing we did was connect the ball on the Sphero EDU app. The second thing we did was set time, speed, and the angle on the ball. The third thing we did was set the ball on the ground and hit start so it can do its run. Then after one successful run, we put on an orange nubby cover. Then, after the orange nubby cover had a successful run, we changed it and put on a blue nubby cover.
And then here are some graphs, and what we found out was the thicker the cover, the more friction and the less distance was traveled. And then there's a conclusion.
This lab can serve as the basis for other types of scientific studies by showing how friction gradually stops the ball after it has reached its peak speed. Friction is the force that resists the motion of one object on another.
All right. So we've learned a lot about friction and forces, and I hope you guys learned something.
All right, so I'm Michael Singley. I am representing Calc 2 class. We created this short presentation to basically give off to next year's Calc 2 class. So let's get right on into the introduction video. So first we have our basic introduction video done by the entire class, including Mrs. Falzerano, on what generally differential equations are and what these next 5 steps will be around the globe.
Hey class, and welcome to the overview of differential equations. We created this presentation as an overview of what you'll be learning in your unit of differential equations.
First, we'll experiment with a real-life scenario of simple harmonic motion.
Next, we'll learn a new technique to solve differential equations called separation of variables.
After you learn the long way, you can use an algorithm through numbers to save you some time. Nick, go on.
You can solve differential equations using a visual method known as slope fields. And if you don't think Calculus 2 applies in the real world, we have an interview with an expert to show you.
All right, so as seen in the video, we're going to first move on to real-world applications. This short video clip next was actually done by Taya Bauer.
Problems can be modeled with relationships between changing quantities. Last year in calculus, you learned that such rates of change are represented mathematically by derivatives. So oftentimes, scientists have mathematical equations which relate an unknown function and one or more of its derivatives. These types of equations are differential equations, and you'll explore different methods for obtaining their solutions in this unit. There are many mathematical models involving differential equations. Some of them that you'll be exploring include population growth, radioactive decay, sales, Newton's law of cooling, wildlife populations, chemical reactions, and introductions to structures subject to simple harmonic motion. Differential equations can also model oscillations of buildings undergoing seismic forces. In simpler terms, this means differential equations can model the motion of multi-story structures experiencing earthquakes. Tokyo and San Francisco are 2 cities with large buildings that undergo many earthquakes. With differential equations, you can model the motion of these buildings during one of those earthquakes.
Thank you, Taya, for that short video clip. Next up, this video clip was done by myself, and this is experimental investigations.
I wanted to give you a little bit of information. Back in the 1940s, the Tacoma Narrows Suspension Bridge in Washington State collapsed on November 7, 1940. Here, the engineers failed to understand simple harmonic motion and why the bridge wasn't built correctly and how it broke. Here is the setup we'll be using for this experiment. It's pretty easy. All you want to do here is make sure the weight is constantly oscillating above the motion sensor. Here is the motion sensor and force sensor picking up the data once you start your run. Basically, it's kind of easy. You just set up your acceleration, force position, and other variables on the left-hand side of this graph. As seen here, the position at 1.8 seconds is a negative absolute max. Same with the force at 1.8 seconds. On to acceleration. Acceleration is all the way at peaking. And back to velocity, where the velocity will be 0. And here's all your graphs put together. So, pretty easy.
All right, well, thanks. Next, we're going to move on to Euler's method. It does look like it's spelled Euler's, but we found out quickly that that is wrong. This presentation was done by Tyler Fisher.
Tyler here, and today we will be learning a little bit about Euler's method. Euler's method is a numerical method that can be used to approximate the solution to a differential equation that can't be solved using the separation of variables technique or any other calculus methods. So on the left we have a picture of Leonhard Euler, who was actually the creator of this method, and to the right we have a graphic that basically sums up Euler's method. Now that you have a little background information on Euler's method, let's hop into an example. So our differential equation is dy dx equals sine of x. And our step to the left, which is highlighted in green, is delta x equals 0.25, which is what our table increases by as we move further along. So we're given all of our x values, and our y value that we start off given is 0. So our first step is to find our dy dx, which is our x and y values plugged into our differential equation. So sine of our x value, which is 0, is going to equal 0. And our next step is to find our dy, which we have to take our dy dx value that we just found, which is 0, and multiply it by our step of 0.25. And once again, that's going to equal 0. So now we move to the next row. To find our new y, we have to take our old y, which is 0, and add it to our dy, which we found was 0, and that's going to equal 0. So then you do your dy dx, and that's going to equal sine of our x value, which is 0.25. That's going to equal 0.2474. And then we have to find our dy value. And our dy value is our 0.2474 multiplied by our step. And that's going to equal 0.06185. And as you can see, doing this over and over again for multiple problems is going to get repetitive by hand. So instead of doing this, you can create an algorithm in numbers that acts as a calculator to just fill out your answers for you. Our first step is inserting our differential equation. So you have to hit new formula in the cell that you want it in, and it's sine of our x value. The second step is finding your dy. To find your dy by your step, so new formula, dy dx times our step, which is 0.25. The third step is finding your new y, so you have to take your dy plus your old y. So you're going to take old y. The final step is dragging all the cells to the bottom.
All right, so that was Euler's method, and as seen on the board, we do bully Fisher sometimes about his heavy hands on the iPad. That's just a common thing we do. But next up, we have separation of variables. I believe this one was done by Jordan Murray.
Called separation of variables, which can be used to mathematically determine the solution of a differential equation. Sometimes the algebra can be a little bit tricky in this technique. In this particular example, we're looking at a chemical reaction. We're asked to find how much of a substance A is present after 2 hours. On the left side, I provided the equation and solution. On the left side, it involves integration to find our general solution and our solution. When working through problems like these, a great way to ensure that you've arrived at the correct solution is using the Sage Math app. A little bit of programming knowledge is needed, but ultimately it will help you find the answer. I've created a program here where all you have to do is declare 2 variables and a function. And then from there, you just have to let the computer do the rest. It will solve and give you your general solution. As you can see, the general solution is provided. All you have to do is solve for a of y, and that will give you the same exact solution.
All right, again, thank you for Jordan for that video. And our last video is slope fields. This was done by Nick Heckman.
Slope fields are graphical representations used to find the solutions of differential equations. For this problem, a slope field can be used to determine how much power is used in this circuit. First, you want to solve the differential equation, as I have done here. After you get the answer, you want to plug it into a slope field generator, and once you do that, you can see that the solution to the problem is I equals 2.
Thank you for Nick Heckman for that short video clip. Next up, we actually interviewed a real student from Susquenita. You may know Eli Whitehead Zimmers. I believe he was a graduate in 2020.
He was a school board rep when he was a student here.
Thank you. So here we actually did a live interview while Eli was at college in our classroom.
Well, Nick, first off, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And I'm attending university right now.
Good college. What do you major in?
I am a junior physics major.
So, is there any application of Calculus 2 that you're currently using?
And I'm taking electromagnetics right now. And we have these set of equations called Maxwell's equations. And they're different equations to figure out like electric and magnetic fields in like different applications. But they're written in what's called differential, or sometimes it's called point form. And so let's say like you know the electric field of like some given system. That's actually equal to like maybe the derivative of the magnetic field. So to be able to solve for the magnetic field, you have to use like that separation of variables and then integrate both sides to be able to find it. So I had like a whole homework where I was just like doing differential equations the whole time to solve for like the magnetic field. So yeah, also in electromagnetics, we like our first like 2 units was studying like the contributions. Let's say like you have a wire with like a current running through it, so there's a lot of electrons in there. That wire with those like electrons flowing through it is going to create like an electric and magnetic field at different places. And at a certain point, you would say, okay, what's the electric or magnetic field here? To figure that out, you just have to look at a really small part of that wire, right? And then sum it over the whole wire. So that you're integrating over the length of the wire to find the contribution of everything to find the electric field at one point. So you use integrals to say like, okay, here's a differential length, like maybe like dx, right? And then you integrate it over the whole length of the wire. And you can do that with like the wire, you can do that with like a ring of charge you've done. But then also where it starts to get really applicable is looking at like solenoids or like toroids. And that's when you can actually use those like in a circuit. And we used that theory and like we found magnetic field in like a solenoid. And me and my friends just built a metal detector in our electromagnetics class, like using those principles. It's super cool. It's awesome. And then one last one. I'm doing an internship at the Geological Survey right now, like studying oceanography. And one like really, really important concept that we do a lot is this thing called the Fourier Transform. And basically what that is like, let's say you put a sensor out on the beach and you're measuring all this data about the ocean flowing over. So you're measuring like the water level. And you're getting data that's like looking kind of like a wave, but it's super complex because the ocean's really messy and weird. It's not like those beautiful sine waves that you look at in like, trigonometry class or whatever like that. So what you do is this idea of adding up different frequency waves. So like sine waves with like a super short frequency or like a longer frequency, and adding up an infinite amount of them together to approximate a more complicated looking wave. And so you can like simplify all this really complex ocean data by having that idea of like, let's take something smaller and simple and use a summation. You guys did like Riemann Sums in Calc 1, right?
Yeah, we've done some.
You use those maybe. Yeah. So using those and then like summing an infinite amount of those simple sine waves to approximate like what the ocean looks like. It's really cool. So yeah, I've used calculus so much, and just having that like framework of like understanding what's going behind like, you know, solving integrals and thinking about like, can I take like a small differential unit and like sum it over something? It's like really powerful. It's really cool.
Yeah, so it sounds like you use that a lot. Is there...
Yeah.
I think that's everything we have to ask you for today, so it's been great having you.
Wow, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so that was an interview with Eli. And finally, we have this short outro video clip. Hopefully, the next Calc 2 class will continue our little hashtag catch the cube we have going on here.
Future Calc 2 class.
Catch the cube!
All right, and that is the completion of the presentation. I just wanted to say thanks for AP Calculus and Physics for creating their own separate presentations, because we had honestly no clue they were doing their things, and we just didn't. And we do, all of us in all the classes, even the students aren't here or in different sporting events, do really appreciate you guys here to listen to our presentations. So thank you so much.
Thank you again for having us, and thank you to everyone in this room. Your support is crucial to continuing lessons and projects like these. So thank you for supporting technology at Susquehanna.
I would just like to say thank you to Mrs. Falzerano, because personally I know how amazing she is and what she brings out in these students, and it's pretty evident by having them learn how it is used in every day is huge, right? And so my little side note on that was when Michael was learning about Euler's method, I thought it was Euler's when I first saw it. And when he said, no, Mom, it's Euler's method, I'm like, Euler's method, that's what they used in Hidden Figures when they were figuring out how to bring John Glenn back in from outer space. So, like, it's real world stuff, and I just think it's really cool. So thank you for what you do to really, really just encourage and support and just bring out everything in these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of all of us, just outstanding. So many different elements, just of teamwork, the relevancy to connecting calculus and physics into applications. And I love the idea of creating this application for future classes to be able to use as a launching pad and a resource, and connecting to graduates who are studying in the field to connect them as well. I personally learned so much in a short period of time, so it's always great to visit your classroom and see the excitement that's happening, and thank you for generating and unleashing that passion in our students. Thank you. So I think this is a great segue when we talk math into our presentation this evening for our auditors.
Good evening. I'm going to grab the mic, and I think I'll just sit up here. All right, I think, yep.
We're expecting a video with a lot of graphics and things that run across the floor.
Well, you know, it's tax season. Hopefully next year we'll do this in November or December, and then maybe we'll have a video. Not making any promises. So thank you for having us here tonight. I know we just seen each other last week to give you guys a little bit of an intro into the general fund and where we were with the audit. We've spent a lot of countless hours with your team here at the district to figure out a few more things and have statements for you now that you guys can approve so that the audit can get finalized here shortly, and you can do some of your filings that will be due by the end of the month. So we're going to walk through a couple of these pages to bring your attention to a couple important segments of the audit, and I am here mostly to answer your questions. So you feel free to ask questions. I left a few business cards up there. If you want to reach out later with questions, I'm happy to take a call too and go over things. So you have several handouts from us in front of you. I should also say I have Chris Schradley with me here. I'm still so excited about all this physics stuff. Education has gotten a lot cooler since I was in school. And she did a lot of wonderful work on this audit, and it was great to have her on board and help walk through this. So we'll look at the big package first. Those are your almost finished audited financial statements. If you flip past the table of contents, is our independent auditor's report. And just to remind you, our role as your auditors are really to look at management's numbers and apply audit procedures to validate the numbers and help out with recommending some corrections if needed. So at this point, we have a draft audit opinion for you here, which is what we call an unqualified or clean audit opinion, so that at this point, we believe that the financial records reflected in these financial statements are materially correct based on the procedures that we have applied. And we say that in 3 pages, or 2.5 here, so that's the gist of that. After that, on page 13, are your government-wide financial statements. That's where government accounting is trying to look like corporate accounting a little bit. I know you don't look at that this way throughout the year, but it's a good snapshot. If you want to focus on the governmental activities column, that shows you, on top of the current assets that you have, which is mostly general fund, you also have, a lot of buildings and other assets, such as a lot of iPads, and so your total assets are $44.6 million, and you have some deferred outflows of resources. That's sort of a parking lot for some accounting for pension and OPEB related items. So it's it's there, but it's not going to buy you any iPads. It's just a holding spot. On the next page are your liabilities, current liabilities. A lot of summer payroll is accrued, and some $2.4 million of current portion of long-term debt. So you can see that your annual debt service is right around that $2.4 million mark, and talking about the new debt you're bringing on, that basically give or take adds a year to your debt table. Then your non-current liabilities are $52 million. That's a big number, and I'm sure at this point everybody knows that that is driven by your share of the PSERS liability, that even though you're paying lots of money into PSERS, it's really not shrinking a whole lot for you. So it's just kind of a balance sheet stable these days for the school districts. So overall, you have negative net position, which at first it's like, wow, we're kind of sort of in the hole really, but it's really just because of the allocation of PSERS that is totally out of your control. If you take that out, you're actually in a good spot. The next page is on this whole government-wide full accrual method, looking at expenses and revenues. Maybe somebody can develop a presentation here for that little video, but in the end, your change in that position is $364,000. So that means you kind of broke even for the year, and I think for the whole district, a government, that's I think that's a good place. Now on page 16, we'll get to the actual fund statements, which is the view of your information that you're looking at much more throughout the year. It's more of a current focus of what are our cash resources now and what's coming up soon, not so much long-term outlook here. And you can see in the general fund, like we talked about last week, you have a fund balance of $15.3 million at the end of the year, so it's a robust fund balance. We also show the capital reserve fund slightly to the right there. We talked last week about whether or not we're going to talk about that, so we're here today with that information. And you have investments in that fund of about $1.7 million. And you basically present the whole fund balance as assigned for future capital projects. We're going to skip page 17. And then on page 18, you can see the general fund, basically the income statement. We'll skip that for now. We'll have a better way of looking at it in a minute. And you can look at your capital reserve fund, though, in the middle there, where you have a little bit of interest income, much lower than the last few years. and you have about $513,000 of capital outlays. There was some roofing work done on a few other projects. No major, construction type activity going on right now. Next, we're going to go to page 21, which is your food service fund. The food service fund had financially a rather unusual year with COVID and everybody switching to the to basically having all the meals paid by the federal government for the students. So if you go to the page 22, you can see your operating revenue, which we're still reconciling a little bit, but we're almost there. It should be very close to the number you see. Is relatively low compared to last year's because students didn't have to pay for their meals, except for the start of the school year. Your operating expenses are about $735,000, which brings you to an operating loss, which is very common for food service funds because they're heavily subsidized by state and federal money, which you see next. And your federal sources are much larger this year, again, for a reason we just discussed. So overall, you come to a $26,000 income in this fund before the transfer in from the general fund. And what happens there is the general fund helps out the food service fund with, operating and maintenance type tasks. So then an entry is posted at the end of the year to recognize some of that cost that the general fund really incurred for food services type activities to move that into the food service fund. But then the district here doesn't say, okay, now food service fund, pay the general fund for that effort. You're recording it as a transfer in so that the money stays in the food service fund. That's just how this district is handling that. All right. The next page I want you to quickly look at with me is page 25. That is what we refer to as a fiduciary fund. That really accounts for all the different clubs and activities, probably mini-thon, right, that the school district sort of undertakes, where the school district holds the funds of others, but it's really not the school district's money. The clubs control what they want to use it for. The clubs control what, how they're going to raise the money. You don't budget for it. It's you're just holding it for them. So that's reflected here. There were some accounting changes, really exciting stuff, where basically a little bit of that money didn't meet this fiduciary fund status any longer, and it's now moved over into your general fund. But that's pretty low dollar numbers for the district. And then on the next page, you can see how many fees and sort of collections that fund brought in, and then what, how much student activity expense was incurred. Those are the statements. I would go over a couple of footnotes with you. Unless you have any questions on these financial statements, I'd be happy to answer them. Not a ton of new accounting standards this year as far as footnotes. I always like to go over the debt footnote with the school districts, since you may want to go to page 43. You were just talking about issuing new debt. On page 43, in the bottom section, note 10, you can see all the outstanding debt of the district at this point. You can see the interest rates. So, hearing the interest rate that was suggested, it's right in that range where you are at right now. And on the next page, you can see how much your beginning debt was last year. You started out the year with about $9.8 million, and then you paid down debt, and you refunded some debt for interest rate savings. So your outstanding long-term debt at the end of the year was down to $7.3 million. And below the other graph on page 44, you can see your future debt service. So the year you're right now, your principal is about $2.4 million. You can see that your interest expense is relatively low compared to your principal outstanding. You have good rates. And then, it seems like you're just going to add another layer to that debt schedule. And for a school district, your debt is really on the low end. If I work with some school districts where debt is much higher, and it's much more of a point of discussion during budgeting and trying to figure out how to pay the debt when yet you have other needs of improving things. So kudos that you're in a good spot there. I told you we were going to come back to the general fund. So if you go to page 60, that is a general fund budget to actual schedule. And that's where you can kind of look at and see how the year worked out compared to what you guys had planned. So the left two columns is the budget that was adopted for 2021. There was no budget amendment done throughout the year, so the original and final budget columns are identical. And then the third column, the actual budgetary basis, those are your actual numbers, how they panned out. So you can see that your revenues in total were $32.7 million. They're higher than what you had budgeted, which was $31.9 million. And like we said, the main reason there is that everybody budgeted so conservatively for an earned income tax, and it came in like it always had before. So that was a big budget win there. The expenses came in lower overall at $34.2 million. You had budgeted them at $35.5. I think there's really a variety of reasons. I think a lot of projects were just not done with the pandemic still really influencing things. Salaries were a little bit down. Your health insurance experience, which was much better than budgeted for, and that's always a little tough when you're self-insured. But you can see in your top two lines, your regular and special programs, you missed the budget. And that is mostly because of these charter school expenses that you were incurring. They were over $1 million beyond what you had budgeted. So that's, you did make it up in other areas, but that was definitely a big budget miss. And I would, this view of this budget to actual schedule, I would encourage you as the board to look at that more throughout the year, because what you could, your budget is basically telling the district, hey, this is how you should spend the funds. And when you have changes in how you're spending the budget, you're spending more on charter schools, but you're spending less elsewhere. You can do budget transfers to more align your budget with where the money is actually spent. So that can be more of a dialogue between the board and the business office to keep, maybe adjust. You don't have to get it all to $1, but to adjust some of those critical areas. So that would be a good process to think about doing this year you're in right now towards the end of the year.
Can I just quick question?
Yes, sir.
What is recommended as far as frequency in which those discussions would take place? If they're not initiated by the business director, manager, should that, quarterly or twice a year? Is there any framework in which that we could try to schedule something like that?
Yeah. So two answers to that. One is, most boards, if it's like a not-for-profit board, any board, you really start the meeting with a treasurer's report, where you look at, where's cash at, where are investments at, budget to actual, what happened. I think in a board without a finance committee, that's what I would encourage to do, and it doesn't have to be stale every month, the same information. Maybe you get used to a quick overlook of where you're at, and then maybe 1 month you dive into revenues a little bit more. If it's tax collection season, how are the taxes coming in? Towards the end of the year, it's maybe more the discussion of where are we spending our money, and do we have enough budget left? So you can, sway it a little bit with where you're at in the year. You can also think about a finance committee so that the group as a whole doesn't have to spend as much time on it. Most boards have, members with a variety of backgrounds, and maybe the people with more of a financial background can form a committee and take care of that more and just report back to the full board at a higher level. Those are the two, I think, things to think about. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. The rest of the financial statements are just required schedules about pensions. I imagine we and other auditors talked to you about those a lot in the last few years. Nothing really has changed, unfortunately. Not much movement to a lower PSERS liability. There's a letter that has in bold significant audit matters, sort of after the second, after the opening paragraph. That's a relatively standardized letter that we as auditors issue to our school boards, where we give you a bit of an overview about, hey, these are the footnotes that are important, or these are some really big estimates in your financial statements, just to share with you what some of that more important information is. You can take a look at page 3, where we're listing out in bullet point form some of the larger adjustments we had to propose to the district's financial records to bring them into accordance with government accounting standards. So that, that list in this district in the past has been much shorter or non-existent. So you can see this year was a bit of a different situation, but I'm optimistic that next year will look better in that regard. And we do plan after the audit, right before we issue your audit, to get together with the folks in the business office and go through all of our audit entries one more time to make sure everybody's on board and understands where the information came from and how next year we can make sure we get to that point. So that's this letter. And then we have also the single audit, which is a separate staple document with really small numbers on the first page. That is your, those are your federal grants. And this year, with some of the COVID relief funding, the grants are a little bit higher. Your total spending of federal grants on the page 2 of what we call the CFA, the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards, is $1.5 million. So that's how much federal money the school district spend on various activities. And then because you need this single audit, we're also reporting our audit findings in that format. So you will see, starting on page 76, 75, the findings, and then the school district business office, Dr. Fox will respond to the findings with what we call a corrective action plan, basically saying, these are the things we're going to do to fix these matters in the future. And similar information is included in the last letter that you have in front of you. The only change there is in the back, we have some other comments. Those are suggestions that are not necessarily material items, but just some thoughts for the district to implement in the business office to safeguard assets better, to make operations a little bit more efficient, and work through some other kinks that should be addressed but are not as big of a matter. So that's sort of the to-do list after you tackle the big ones in the front. That's just a high-level overview for you guys of the audit, and I'm happy to answer questions.
I'd like to publicly thank you and your team for all of your thoroughness, your availability and responsiveness. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah. Well, if there are no other questions, and I know that's a lot of information, we'll let you continue your meeting. You have my contact info. As you read through the information, if you want to talk about anything, please call me. Happy to address anything that's on your mind. And if we met your new business manager virtually, and are excited to meet him in person, and are happy to help make that transition smooth and provide guidance along the way. So thank you for having us, and have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you. All right, next up is finance. I need a motion to move the treasurer's report.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. A and B.
So moved.
Second.
All right. We got a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
When do we do abstaining? Is this now? I would need to abstain from check 7196.
And I need to abstain from check 7172.
And I need to abstain from check 7186. Anybody else? All right. Is there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 8, debt resolution. Looking for a motion to approve the debt resolution for $2,350,000 for a bank loan to fund capital projects for the district.
So moved.
Second.
We got a first and a second. Is there any questions? All right, seeing no questions, can you do a roll call vote?
Mrs. Stingley?
Yes.
Dr. Rubish?
Yes.
Mr. Carmo?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilt? Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Walborn?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Lehman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, next is number 9, a motion to approve the 2021 audit results.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we got a first and a second. Is there any questions? All right, seeing no questions, is there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Number 10, capital area intermediate unit budget. To approve the CAIU operating budget for 2022-2023, which reflects an estimated contribution to the district of $15,079.18.
So moved.
Second.
Got a first and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, do you want to do another roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Stingley?
Yes.
Dr. Rubish?
Yes.
Mr. Carmo?
Yes.
Mrs. Walborn?
Yes.
Dr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Wilt? Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Lehman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, next is a motion for personnel to move A through H.
So moved.
Second.
If want to add something here on B, accept the retirement of Dennis Shambaugh with regrets.
Agreed.
Denny's been here, what, 41 years now?
42.
42? Who's counting? All right. Okay.
Second that.
Is there any other discussion? All right, seeing no more discussion, is there any negative votes? Seeing none, motion carries. What? Leanne.
Under D, from we're waiving the anti-nepotism policy for Mrs. Howe, will there be some special arrangement made for her direct supervisor in regard to the fact that she would be reporting to her husband?
Yes, absolutely. She'll be reporting directly to the building principal, Mr. Craig Funk.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, now once again, is there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, number 12, a motion to approve Kristen Kenya as a volunteer coach for independent swimming for the 22 PIAA state championship meet, pending clearances.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I got a first and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, is there any negative votes? Motion carries. Number 13, 2022 to 2025 Susquehanna School District Comprehensive Plan. A motion to approve the plan.
So moved.
Second.
Got a first and a second. Is there any discussion?
Sure. Unless this is different.
No. All right, hearing no discussion, is there any negative votes? You okay? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, 14, Discipline Committee recommendation, a motion to approve the board's Discipline Committee recommendation for student 010807.
So moved.
Second.
First and a second, and there's no discussion on this matter. Is there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. 22-23 school board meeting schedule. Looking for a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Have we checked this schedule with all the schedules from Mars and Venus and all the other places that we'll find later on that something will conflict?
To the best of our ability.
I've been on the school board 13 years, and I think it's been wrong every one of those 13 years. There's been something that popped up at some point.
We are definitely
so you could
flexible.
Start a new record here, maybe.
There's a new sheriff in town. It could be different now.
We are flexible.
All right, is there any negative votes? Hearing none, motion carries. Next is Dr. Rubish.
Okay, plenty of big news at Cumberland Perry Career Technical Center. They're going to plan to undergo a rebuilding project, adding on to the building. I think it's like 5 different majors to it. Redoing the facade outside, which looks really going to look sharp for it, and mainly because there's a need to this. They set a record this year where they had, last 2 weeks ago they had 1,000 applications and still counting. This is an increase of 100% over 5 years ago. So the Career and Trade Center is booming and they need support. You want me to move on to the next one then?
Can I ask you a question, John? So has there been a discussion about how that expansion will affect their budget and how it consequently could affect our budget?
Yes, and you asked me to recall details. I'm not going to be able to help you out.
Is it going to cost us more money?
I don't think so. Dr. Fox?
There hasn't been a solid plan as to what that debt structure would look like. But as a membering partnership school and a school in terms of an Articles of Agreement, the way that debt is consolidated, there's a possibility that we could pay a proportion of some of the debt and consolidation. As to what that structure looks like at this time, I don't think that has been formally ironed out at this particular point, but I think they, at this time, have shared with the JOC members a concept and a framework and kind of a visualization and the why behind the need to kind of relook at it. But in terms of, there's been some high-level discussions here from a superintendent advisory council. But as of ironing out a particular formula at this time, that has not occurred.
I'm not disputing the need, nor am I. I think it's great. I just think before they would want to borrow millions of dollars for a project, that they would need approval from the districts that are paying, the budget. So, will that? I assume that would happen at some point.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There will need to be a presentation. That presentation will occur. My understanding would be Mr. Brune will be out. He is the administrative director at Cumberland Perry Career and Tech Center to explain a little bit about the steps and what that might occur. And I think the process, it's still while it's gaining legs, it's still being developed as to what that looks like. But you're exactly right. That would be a matter of a fact to authorize and incur any additional debt would need to be a full board decision, full boards of all members is my understanding, and don't quote me because I could be absolutely incorrect, but a full membership of those participating under the in an amendment that could have to occur depending on the articles of agreement. But there's some steps taken along the way, and I'm sure Mr. Brune will do a much better job of explaining what those steps are when he comes and visits us, maybe April or May, depending upon when. You're welcome.
And whether it's this or any other thing, in generally, does that would we then vote as a board to say yay or nay, and then Dr. Rubish takes that vote to the joint operating committee? Is that, I mean, I'm just more wondering curiously.
I think what would happen is right now Dr. Rubish's role is exactly what he's doing. He's sharing out information, providing it from those meetings, the joint operating committee, serving as that delegate and representative. But issues such as this come back to the full board, and the full board decides, casts the vote, and then it goes back to the joint operating committee, who would then take those, and it would be a full representation of the full board. It was my understanding. How that maybe is broken down could be determined at different local levels, but that's my basic understanding of that.
And do you know what the new majors are? And
I had this information last week, and I forgot to bring it this week. And one is fire and fire.
Fire and police, or EMT.
No, it's fire. Yeah.
No, but is it fire and police? I thought there was two things.
Yeah, it's fire and something else. Yeah, I can't remember what the other word is. Yeah, I had it last week, and I forgot to bring it this week.
And do we know if everybody else's numbers are up? Is our numbers up too, with the number of students that are applying?
Mr. Fortelka, do you have any idea that our applications are up this year?
So I believe our applications are very similar to last year. Obviously, last year was a bit of a different year with students opting to wait another year. I know this year we have an increased number of sophomores who did not apply last year. So I believe that overall numbers are similar to last year, but the demographic is a little bit different, I think, because of COVID and how that impacted things last year.
But then our percentage of spots in there would stay the same? I mean, they wouldn't...
They do it over, how many years is it? I think it's 5. They average out what you're doing. Does 5 sound right, Dr. Fox? Yeah. They do it by average over a time period, not just the 1 year.
All right, if there's no more questions, we'll move on to your next report.
Okay, Susquehanna Blackhawk Foundation. Let's get my notes out here. I think I mentioned this before. We're having a media design competition or contest to celebrate the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the elementary school, and the theme for it is Susquehanna Elementary School, where success begins to take flight. So the information is now up on the website. We're going to be pushing it out there, and you can all enter because we have an open category. It's not just for students. We have 4 different categories for students, and there's a $100 prize for first prize for this. So get your paintbrushes out and design something. Also along that line about the arts, we have an artist in residence. Susquehanna Blackhawk Foundation is going together with the Perry County Council of the Arts and at the middle school, and they're designing something with glass, which I can't imagine how you would start to do this, but it looks pretty neat from what I've seen of it. And that's going to happen before the end of the month. Probably the biggest thing right now is we need an auditor. We need a certified public accounting firm to do a compilation. This is to get state grants, and we don't get it done. We don't get any state grants. And I've had some prices quoted to me, and they're a lot of money, and we're trying to get it for cheaper. So if anybody knows anybody or anything, we need help, refer them to me. Thank you.
Dr. Rubish, who does your website? The website of the foundation?
Stephanie Norman.
It's amazing. Like, she does just please let her know. She just does a great job. If anyone has not been on the website, it's really very well done.
Yeah, this month, if you don't know, we have 4 different personalities every month, and we change them every month, which encourages traffic to the website because people want to see who's up there. We have 3 alumni and 1 teacher. And this month we had 2 people from the 70s. We don't usually get them that old. 2 people who also went to Cumberland Perry, and Tracy Jones from the middle school.
Thank you, Dr. Rubish. Number 18, mark your calendars for the caucus meeting on April the 5th and the regular board meeting on April the 12th. And you're up.
All right, thank you. And there's certainly nothing wrong with the 70s. We love the 70s. That was a great decade in time. On March 18th, 2022, we'll be holding a flexible instruction day. This is a weather makeup day as a result of flooding that occurred this past September that unfortunately did close our schools. So again, to everybody, March 18th, Flexible Instruction Day, and we thank you for your flexibility and support. March is Music in the Schools Month, and this year's theme is Music, the Sound of the Heart. We are fortunate to have dedicated teachers within the Susquehanna School District for bringing music alive and to our students. Mrs. Weaver, Mr. Callagher, Mr. At the high school, and Mr. Shirowski and Mrs. Flowers at the middle school, and Mr. Ryder at our elementary school. And we know that music extends not just in the classroom, but outside into musical productions that our students perform in each year. And this year, we couldn't be even more excited under the direction of Mrs. McMunn and Dr. Epley. Our talented students will be casted in the depiction of the Broadway hit Mamma Mia. And tickets are available, as Cadence and Taryn already spoke about. They're available online, and you can contact the high school office for assistance as well. And they'll be held the 24th, 25th, and 26th at 7 o'clock. So why go once when you can go all 3 times to see the students' hard work, dedication, and passion in action?
Excuse me, do we know if tickets will also be available at the door?
I'll get back to you on that answer.
Because normally in the past they have been. So if I don't want people not to come because they think they have to buy them online. So I just wasn't sure.
Absolutely, we'll get back to you on that answer. Absolutely, that's a great question. Congratulations to Michael and Rachel Singley on qualifying and competing at the PIAA District 3 Swimming Championships. A special congratulations goes out to Michael for his 3rd and 4th place finish that earned him medals and will take him to compete this weekend at the PIAA State Championships at Bucknell University. Congratulations to Dominic Caldwell on reaching an incredible athletic milestone on obtaining 100 wins for his outstanding career. And the best to Dominic, as well as Mason McClendon and Cale Quigley, as they qualified for the PIAA State Championships this weekend in the sweetest place on earth in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Thank you to our high school student council. Again, I feel like I'm repeating, but I think it's just a testament to Cadence and Taryn's great report. That our high school student council for holding the mini-thon, and as well as holding up Mr. Frotelka with several pieces of tape, which I thought was a great thing. To support locally the Four Diamonds Fund. And the Four Diamonds Fund does so much great work for the Central Pennsylvania community. And they raised well over $15,000. I think it was $15,247.86, if I'm accurate in saying that. So pretty phenomenal. Congratulations goes out to Mr. Dennis Shanbaugh on 42 years of inspiring, motivating, and passionately serving students in our district. One thing, certainly, he is an inspiration. That foot never is off the throttle when it comes to educating our students. Day in and day out, his passion, and he's forever a Blackhawk, and he's always welcome. And again, the offer to substitute teach is on the table.
A comment on Denny is that he founded the soccer program here many years ago, and the first couple years, there were both boys and girls on the teams. Girls didn't have a separate team at that point, so they played together.
That's great, and he's still passionate about soccer and still doing it. So phenomenal, and I just inspired by what he's able to do day in and day out. I want to reemphasize to and to everybody in the community that our budget is, from our presentation at the Caucus in March, is our first preliminary budget. And we are continue to formulate our budget because it's a process. And I'd like to thank all of our business office team and also Mr. Ken Medina, our business consultant, for their assistance and dedication. And I'm excited to continue to work on this and to work on it collaboratively, providing for April's caucus meeting refinements and to present again to you as we take the 100,000-foot presentation and try to now narrow it down as we get closer to landing at 25,000 feet. So again, I'm excited about that work, excited about our team, and thankful for that. So now I'm excited to hand it over to our assistant to the superintendent for academic operations to give us an academic overview. And here's Ms. Krista Snyder.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to say my board report should start off with a picture of Mr. Hortop guy. We should have had that, so I think at the next meeting we need to show that. Just want to say congratulations specifically for the mini-thon. I thought it was an excellent event and just really excited to see all the happenings here. Definitely coming up in a couple days on my 2-month anniversary already, so been very, very busy in the office, and just wanted to share a couple things with you this evening. I am working heavily with several staff members, including Mrs. Matosh, to create a professional growth catalog that's going to be released to staff next month in preparation for some summer professional learning opportunities that we're hoping to offer both synchronously and asynchronously, bringing back some in-person sessions, so we're really excited about that and to get that rolling out to staff. And then also I'm really excited that we are going to be partnering with the United Way and the Capital Area Intermediate Unit to bring Ready for School, Ready to Succeed to the district. It's a long time coming. I'm really excited about it, and we're moving pretty quickly with them. Basically, it's a fully funded program with the United Way that will provide us with a liaison in the district that will have space at the elementary school, and we'll be able to work with our families in the district, able to bring programs for our 3 to 5-year-old age group, getting them ready for kindergarten readiness activities. So it's just something that I'm really passionate about and really excited to bring to the district. So hopefully we can get that process rolling and hopefully even started by the end of the school year. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, we'll turn the mic over to Dr. Herman, Special Education Update.
Thank you. Just a couple updates tonight. So first, a little preview that we're going to welcome Mr. Phoenix coming up here in April, hopefully, to give everyone a little update on the gifted program and how it's been developing since he took over that. I think it's going to be exciting for everyone to hear how he's, all of his good ideas. The second thing would be just like internally, we're kind of preparing for things for next year already. So next month we're going to have some building transition meetings. Some of our students change buildings, obviously, for next year, going from 4th to 5th or 8th to 9th. That just kind of inherently brings some considerations for us to make sure all the students are fully supported based on how their plans are currently written. That way we're just all prepared in the fall, and we can focus on just that excitement of returning to school rather than, any of the paperwork or other logistics that are involved with that. And then the final thing would just be internally within the special education office, just kind of refining and making things a little more efficient for us. I think that's been something that we had on our minds, and just finally had the time to be able to devote to it, to restructure a couple little nuances and make us all a little more efficient, which will obviously benefit then all of our other staff and all of our students. So thankful for all of the work that the office put in on contributing to that.
Thank you. We'll turn it over to athletics. In lieu of athletics, we did talk a little bit about the excitement that we have coming up with the PIAA state championships in wrestling and in swimming, and the representation of our Blackhawks competing in those this weekend coming up. So that's exciting, as well as on Monday, we started our spring season. So we're in full gear already with the spring sports season kicking off with track and field, softball, baseball, and junior high girls and junior high boys soccer, and I believe junior high field hockey as well kicking off. So lots of action happening, and we're hoping for continuation of good weather, and hoping certainly that tomorrow snow doesn't stick around very long, if at any, and we continue to be outside. So our athletes can compete in a lot of different elements. So we're excited about what they bring and getting ready for our first contests coming up relatively shortly. All right, we're gonna.
Can I just make
absolutely.
a correction on the athletics? The state swim meet is not this weekend. It's the 18th and 19th of March, and so I don't want anybody going to Bucknell and going, "Where's the swimming?" It's not until the weekend after the state wrestling championships.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my apologies, and I might have. No, just teasing. Thank you. All right, we'll turn it over now to Buildings and Grounds, Mr. Scott Howell.
Good evening. Thanks for the moment of silence for Tim. Tim Haymaker's 29 years here. I knew Tim all my life. He's going to be missed. He's already missed. We realized yesterday we couldn't find something that he knows where it is. So thanks for the moment of silence. My crew is getting ready for spring sports. Hard at it. We put more filler on the softball field Monday. Trying to get that up to snuff, ready for the softball and baseball seasons. And my crew is also very excited about the student custodial staff starting on Monday. So I'm really excited to get that started and watch that grow in this district. That's all I thank you.
Thank you. Elementary school, Mrs. Comp.
Hi, everyone. So, as always, we are in the heat of a Spirit Week. We're celebrating Read Across America, and we are also having our one book, one school, other way around, one school, one book week happening right now. So we are reading The Lemonade War by Jacqueline Davies. We have given a book to all of our families, and Dr. Fox helped us kick that off by reading the first chapter. We will have some other special guest readers throughout the week. I may be one of them. You'll have to wait and find out. And we have some fun trivia planned, and I can't take any credit for it. This is all done by our amazing intervention staff. They have coordinated all the activities, the spiritware, the calendar for reading, as well as a really cool lemonade stand in our cafeteria where students drop off the answers to their trivia each day. So stay tuned for some fun photos and other big activities that we'll wrap up with at the beginning of next week. We also, in the spirit of reading, have an author visit coming up on April 25th. We'll be inviting Matt Novak. He's a local author from Carlisle. He's also an illustrator, and that's been planned by Cheryl Gross. And then last night, we held our preschool night, so we were really excited to have families back in the building. That was something we really missed last year, was just getting those first interactions with our parents. So families of incoming kindergartners came in. They learned a little bit about the day in the life of a kindergartner, about some of our processes and procedures, what to expect, and what's coming up next. So anyone out there that has a kindergartner coming next year, they have a form online that they're going to be filling out, and they'll be setting up their registration appointments. And we're looking forward to hosting kindergarten registration on April 5th and 6th. It'll be a really busy time for us, but a really exciting time as well.
Thank you. And we'll turn the mic over to middle school, Mr. Ken Ward.
Thank you. I've been hearing about the Lemonade War at home and listened to the readings this week so far. Yeah. Just to mirror what we've heard a few more times tonight, spring sports has started. It's been very busy in the hallways at the middle school this week due to the March weather up and downs. Hopefully we can get our student athletes out into the fields here shortly. It's been bittersweet with the 8th grade students this week. They're finishing up their course selection for their move to the 9th grade this week. Two important dates that we wanted to share with everybody that's been covered one time already. The flexible Instruction Day next Friday, March 18th, and then we're wrapping up the third marking period on March 21st. It appears that March 25th is going to be very exciting at the middle school. We have the Chicago Boys Acrobatics. They're going to be performing for all our students. Today I took the time to watch some of the videos from the Chicago Boys, and it's pretty wild. I think our students are in for a treat on the 25th. Also on the 25th at the middle school in the evening, we are hosting the annual Alicia K. Lanker Middle School Floor Hockey Tournament, so I hope we have a good turnout for that. Next, and although it's over a month away, our 6th grade students and teachers are preparing for a trip to the Junior Achievement BizTown. BizTown combines classroom learning with a day-long visit to a simulated town. This popular program allows our 6th grade students to operate a bank, manage a restaurant, write checks, and vote for a mayor. The program helps students connect the dots between what they learn in school and real world. And lastly, Mr. Black and myself have been talking a lot. We want to continue and improve our communication with the school community. We've been putting out a newsletter here weekly. We encourage everybody to check that out. And this week I've been working with Mrs. Troutman in regards to getting access to the middle school Facebook page, and we plan on posting that very, very often. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. High school, Mr. Fortelka.
Good evening, everybody. You know, our board reps did an excellent job as usual, so a lot of what I'm going to say is just an echo. You know, first, Mr. Shambaugh, seeing his name up there is, it's hard to see. You know, he has impacted the lives of just countless number of students, and then those students' children as well. We were going over the numbers and just the sheer volume of students that have been multi-generational for him is just incredible. So it's, you know, I wish him the best for retirement, but it's sad to see him go. And echoing what Mr. Howell said, I'm really excited to have our student custodians start. I think that our 3 individuals are going to do an excellent job, and I look forward to seeing that grow. And again, another echo, all of our 4 athletes continuing on with the playoffs. I wish them the best of luck, and I look forward to seeing that journey continue. We did finalize all of our college and high school numbers. So for this year, we ended up with 45 students for 69 total classes. So it's excellent to see that turn out again, and a lot of students are really taking advantage of that in high school. And then the last just big important update, so as the middle school is wrapping up with course registration, we are going to be starting that process on the 14th, Monday the 14th. So we're excited to have the transition from the kind of paper style registration to now it's completely online. So looking forward to getting all those numbers in and looking forward to building our schedules for next year. Thank you.
Mr. Fortelka, a question. What happened with the conflict between the senior class trip and the senior awards ceremony?
So we were able to resolve that without issue, and both of them are now occurring on different days.
Are you sure?
I am 100% sure, yes.
Because I think I got a paper that said that the award ceremony was still on the 19th. Now, maybe they made a mistake and sent me out the wrong one again, but...
I believe that conflict was resolved.
Okay. Yeah, I'm guessing it's supposed to be the 16th.
I do not remember which of the 2 ended up being switched.
The award ceremony is usually on the Monday night, which would be the 16th.
The 19th is the senior class trip.
Yeah.
Correct,
For
yes.
sure, yeah.
Okay.
All right, we'll turn it over to technology and Mrs. Matash.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. First, I would like to again thank Mrs. Falzarano and her students for presenting tonight to show how they're using technology in the classroom to transform learning. Nice job, Mrs. Falzarano and students. Thank you. And I would also like to congratulate Mrs. Falzarano and Mr. Shepler for becoming an Apple Learning coach, certified Apple Learning coach. Mrs. Falzarano has not been officially given the email, but she did peek at her portal and saw that she is now also a learning coach. So nice job. That is free professional development provided by Apple. It's over 40 hours of work involved in developing a coaching philosophy and creating a coaching portfolio. Each candidate in the program engages in online course with self-paced modules and 2 days of virtual workshop with Apple Learning Specialist. Both of these, they both did it at volunteer. It was outside of their school day, and we really thank them for leading in the technology and innovation in our school district. So nice job.
And I'm going to cut you off right there and also put your name in there as well. And thank you, Mrs. Matash, because you also led the way as being an Apple Learning coach and receiving that credential. And it's outstanding, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. And that was it for me this evening. Thank you.
Sorry, I should have waited then.
All right, next, is there any members of the board that have any comments or reports they want to report on now?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo off of what everybody else has already said about Mr. Shamball. I was one of those community members that had Mr. Shamball, and my oldest son had Mr. Shamball, and my youngest son is one of the children you were speaking about, middle school, that did his course selection and will just miss Mr. Shamball by a year, and he actually is pretty upset about it. So I think he actually opted not to take that course because of that. So, but if anybody has deserved a retirement, obviously his career shows that, and we wish him the best, and hopefully his retirement is very enjoyable for him.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that. I got the pleasure of coaching with Denny for 2 years when my oldest son was playing middle school soccer, and he doesn't only coach soccer, but he teaches the soon-to-be young men to become good people, not just good soccer players. So he really, a lot of them come to there without any discipline, and it's the first time they're on a team sport. A lot of them don't play travel soccer or something, but he makes them, understand what, to play with discipline and with respect and sportsmanship. So he's just, to be commended, and just a great person.
I remember when I got at the end of my career and I said something to Harriet McGee about now having some of the children of my children, and she said, well, when the grandchildren start walking in, it's time to leave. And I just thought that with Denny Shamball, 42 years, he'd have a shot at 3 generations with 42 years. Could be.
Especially the senior classes.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say my personal congratulations to Mr. Shamball. We should all look as good as he does after leaving from 42 years. You would never know. He definitely will be missed. And I also wanted to say again, thank you to Mrs. Falzerano, to the students tonight. Like I said, I know personally what she's done with students because my son has had her now 3 times, and wanted to take her 3 times. So that's always good, right? But he always comes home and says about how everything is being used and how he can use something in real life, and that's, I just think, is the best part of learning. So thank you again for all that you do with them. Also, congratulations to the wrestlers that are moving on to states, and for those that wrestle the regionals and quite get there this year, but to get even to the regional tournament is a really big deal. Thank you to Dr. Fox for acknowledging that for both of them. And I believe Dr. Epley may have put a comment on, but I did to reach out to her about the tickets, and they will be sold at the door as well as online for Mamma Mia. So no excuse to not get your ticket to the show.
So you can go 3 times.
Yes, and buy for others.
Well, and I wasn't going to say anything, but since we're bringing up tickets for Mamma Mia, one thing that our school does that is very nice is the Monday before, which I believe is the 21st, at 3:30, there's a free show for seniors and veterans. So seniors and veterans are welcome to a free showing of Mamma Mia on Monday. It is the 21st. Thank you. So the 21st. And then, so if you're a senior or veteran, you can go on Monday, and then you can tell everyone to go on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
What is that senior number? Is that like 55? I'm just wondering. Can I qualify?
So the lucky number there is 4. Absolutely.
Yes.
4 times the pleasure.
So some people are lucky enough to be able to go 4 times.
I would be remiss also not to say something about Denny, because I've worked with Denny for a long time. And I will probably get in trouble for saying this, but when we sat in parent conferences, my wife and I was just talking about Denny, and she said, my wife is 51. She was like, oh, I had Denny in school. So he's been around a long time. And the thing about Denny is this, just steady, if there was anyone steady. And I think of the Respect Life Club, which he has, I don't want to say supervised, I don't know what the word would, advised for over 20-some years, and just all for free, and he just always gave of himself, but just steady. He will be missed.
All right, thank you. And public comments, the only public comment we had online was that the tickets are available at the door for sale. So Leanne stole that. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to talk about anything on the agenda or not on the agenda? Come to the microphone. You have to say where you're from, and you have to stand on your left foot. No, I'm just joking about that part. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. I appreciate that. Thank you, Bethany.
All right, so next we're going to look for adjournment with an executive session to be held afterwards, but with no return and voting afterwards.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
We won't be discussing photons, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure we won't be
No
discussing
offense.
photons. Sorry. All right, meeting adjourned.